Okay, so let's talk about this strike and why you should care. So I don't know if you heard, but the actors and writers in Hollywood are on strike. At the time of writing this, the writers have been on strike for over 2 months, and the actors have been on strike for, I guess, over 1 month now. They are in separate unions, with the writers being in the Writers Guild of America, hereon mentioned as the WGA, and the actors being in the Screen Actors Guild, or SAG. As strikes tend to go, the talent brings a list of demands to the table, and the studio producers, the people who finance the films, negotiate for higher pay and other benefits so they can continue to make a living in their craft. There were a few big items on the negotiating table this time around to address sea changes in technology, namely that talent isn't fairly compensated for streaming like they were on traditional television. Actors and writers who were in hit series used to make healthy residuals every time their series went through reruns, was re-released on DVD, renewed on streaming services, whatever the case was. New revenue for the show meant more checks for the talent behind it. The Friends talent makes a whole bunch of money every time their show gets bid on again for a new way for people to see it. But it's not just the big names that make that money. They do get a big slice of the pie, but also the guest stars, writers of particular episodes, just others who were involved. They all get a piece of the pie. Another big issue on the table is the use of AI. Writers are obviously worried about being replaced because Hollywood has a long history of undervaluing writers. And one thing they want to do with background actors is scan their likeness for a day's rate and own and be able to use their likeness in any project they want from that point moving forward. The producers have since clapped back and refuted this, saying that they would only be able to use the likeness for that specific project, and that's it. But I'm inclined to believe that that's backpedaling because someone read that original proposal back to them, and one of them clued in on how psychotic it sounded. And not that they aren't, but there's no way to positively spin a proposal like that to the public without it sounding as horrific as it is. My first job was actually being a background performer on TVs and movies. At the time I was a teenager, so it was all shows that took place in high schools. As an aspiring actor, this experience was invaluable. It taught me what the professional film set environment was like. There's an etiquette to being on set, and you learn it fast or you don't come back. You learn when to shut up, who to listen to, the basic timing of the day, and the demand of long hours that come with film work. It's the perfect introduction job to the industry, and memories that I still value to this day. And of course, background performers come at an expense to the production. I'm not naive. Everyone who was there was being paid for their time, just over minimum wage at the time, plus also food to feed them. But to deny up-and-coming talent from that experience seems like you're creating an extra barrier in a field of work that is already difficult to break into. And it's not like the other option is free extras. That cost just gets displaced somewhere else, and that's post-production, a field of work that has problems of their own. It's no secret that CG artists are already overworked and underpaid. So now we're going to ask them to account for every single background performer. Given the time crunches, CG in big blockbusters is already suffering in quality. This is just going to look like a bunch of Sims walking around in the background with human faces on them. At best, it'll be hilarious. My understanding of how these CG studios work is that the studios bid on projects to the production company and are selected on who can do the best job for the lowest amount of money. The heads of the company make the promises that they may or may not be able to keep, and the animators are just given the job to do it, whether it's feasible or not. They work long hours and often have to compromise the quality of the work to meet the deadline. I mean, I don't know if post-production workers are unionized, but honestly, I think it's about time to start because it sounds more and more like Hollywood wants them to do more of the work for not more of the money. And it's not just extras who will suffer. The lead actors of these shows are struggling right now and have been for years. On the TV model, actors who land a big role in a hit series could make great money for years to come after the show has wrapped. I remember Joseph Gordon-Levitt stating that he can afford to be picky with his movie roles because he still makes enough money from Third Rock from the Sun that he can live off of that and act when he wants to. He gave up a lot of years of his young life for that show, so I think he earned it, and deserves it as long as people are still watching it. But the actors on streaming shows like Orange is the New Black are making a pittance by comparison. I couldn't find how often streaming residuals are paid out, but classic TV is paid out quarterly. While many actors in classic TV can make thousands per paycheck, streaming stars make like $20. Seriously? $20 in this economy? I could make more than that with my tips as a barista in a single day. That's wild. I had no idea the residuals were that bad, but I shouldn't be too surprised since musicians also make basically nothing for their streams through platforms like Spotify. Traditional radio would pay an artist 7 cents per play of a song. On streaming, it's something like 0.003 cents per play. It's absurd. Geez, maybe musicians should unionize too. And I've barely touched the writers yet. Writers have often been underappreciated talent in Hollywood, in a field that they love and they want to use as a creative outlet. They dream of one day making their passion project, but so often they're just given gigs with tons of studio notes while their screenplays sit there collecting dust. Or whatever screenplays they do submit just get slashed to a point where it's unrecognizable. But hey, maybe it's worth it because you get to do what you love for a living, right? Well, not if the producers have anything to say about it. Well, again, they haven't explicitly said that they want to replace writers with ChatGPT. They haven't said they don't want to either. And you know how so many blockbusters have just kind of felt okay and are kind of soulless sequels? Well, imagine how soulless movies will feel once you remove the souls from them entirely. Do you think Paramount doesn't just want to type shit out a Transformers movie into a prompt and then they just, punch it up a bit and put it right into production? I bet you that very thought is making a studio executive man moist right now. No more pesky writers making creative, expensive decisions. Just pure studio notes. You know how there are so many movies that were almost great if it weren't for studio interference? Like Spider-Man 3 could have been so much better had Sony not wanted to shoehorn a whole second movie into that film and just let Sam Raimi make the movie he wanted to make. Imagine that, but every movie. Every movie could be studio notes, the movie. I'm horrified. So what do I suggest to fix this? Well, I'm clearly on the side of the unions. It's time to update the contracts because the industry has changed drastically and talent deserves to be compensated fairly and competitively for their work. And the studios say they're in a tough spot financially. Fine, I believe them. But also, whose fault is that? Were the hired writers and actors really to blame? No, it was the executives. They all jumped into the streaming model, which turned out to be a huge blunder. It was way more expensive to create the infrastructure and content than they've been able to recoup. There's too much competition because they've all jumped in. The market is flooded. Most people can't afford every streaming service, and there isn't enough time to watch everything anyway. Someone is going to sink, and soon. And frankly, it's probably Paramount Plus and Peacock. Sorry, but they're just not gonna make it. Actually, we have it pretty good in Canada here. We have a streaming service called Crave that has a bunch of stuff from Max and Paramount, so it's a good deal. And since we can't get Hulu up here, Disney Plus has all the Hulu stuff, so we get way more content for less money, and honestly, that's probably how it's gonna have to go down elsewhere. The only studio who figured that it was better to make money off of their content, rather than dump a bunch of money into content, was Sony, who keeps putting their stuff onto Netflix, and that seems to be working well for them. Netflix is where Into the Spider-Verse got its following, and helped propel Across the Spider-Verse into being one of the biggest hits of the year. It's kind of a no-brainer, yet it seems so many of these studios have no brains. It's a classic sunk cost fallacy. The idea that you've put so much into something that's failing that you refuse to accept its failure. These companies are holding a bad hand. It's bad in poker, it's bad in relationships, and it's bad for streaming services too. The exception is probably Prime and Apple TV because those companies are so big that the streaming service is just like a small portion of their giant empire. It doesn't really even need to be profitable. The executives say that they can't afford to meet the needs of the writers and actors, but they're also the ones with million-dollar paychecks. They're the ones who actually made the terrible business decisions despite protests from talent. We all acknowledge that entertainment during the pandemic needed to be handled differently. It was a problem that was neither the producers nor the talent's fault, and we can all agree on that. But business practices that were understandable during the pandemic were continued after theaters reopened. So even to this day, if a movie doesn't do great at the box office, it's rushed to digital and streaming in a matter of weeks. I'm sure how they see it is they want to try and get the movie to make as much money as it can while it can. But they're failing to see how audiences get trained by this strategy. Essentially, if an audience doesn't show up to theaters, they get the movie for cheaper or no extra cost sooner. You see, they have trained audiences to wait the theatrical window out so they can see the movie from home. Audiences are incentivized to help a movie bomb so they can watch it for free. That's the business model. Why would people not do that, especially when inflation has everyone tightening their belts as it is? It's no wonder these studios are bleeding money. They're spending more than ever on tons of shows and movies that are just for streaming and as such not making any money. And the movies that would normally make them money are being released in such a way that people would rather just wait a short while and not spend money on them. Even Netflix, who normally doesn't release movies theatrically, actually could start, since they already did with some like their Oscar bait films and Glass Onion. But even then, they don't take the theatrical window seriously. They could have made millions of dollars on Glass Onion by keeping it in theaters since there was obviously a demand for it, but they refused to meet the need and took it out of theaters after just 1 week. Are you kidding me? I'll tell you now, Netflix, as a subscriber for the last 13 years, release your big movies in theaters. I want to see them there. If you're going to buy out the likes of talent like Rian Johnson, at least respect him and his work enough to give people the chance to pay to see it. Anyway, there are solutions and some exciting prospects that could come out of this. The studios have made it clear that they are happy to let working men and women suffer without work until they start losing their houses. They've denied making that claim, but they sure haven't done anything to counter that claim either. There is hope though. This could see the rise of the indie film. We could see an excellent surge of indie studios that are outside of the main studio system, making movies that really mean something to the writers and actors working on them. A24, everyone's favorite indie cred distributor, has already agreed to the terms of SAG and WGA, so they're still making movies. Some actors and writers are getting work, and sure, it won't come with the kind of paychecks that come with working on a big budget movie, but work is work, and a lot of talented people could have their big break soon as a result. Always a good thing. And audiences are already showing Hollywood that we're tired of the status quo. I mean, so many of the huge budget blockbusters this summer were disappointments at the box office. It looks like they're pulling in decent numbers, but their budgets are so out of control that they can't recoup their funds in the theatrical market without nearly hitting $1 billion. People are tired of the same old stuff. I mean, look at these numbers. Fast and the Furious 10, Transformers 7, Mission Impossible 7, Indiana Jones 5. People just aren't showing up in the numbers that studios want, so the safe choices just aren't safe anymore. And it makes sense. The higher these numbers get, the more difficult the point of entry of the franchise is. You can lose fans by your films getting boring, but you won't get any new fans because a lot of people don't want to watch 9 Fast and Furious movies to get caught up. It could not be more clear that the producers are investing in all the wrong things. How about pay your writers better and give them enough time to finish their scripts, so you're not rewriting films on the fly and doing expensive reshoots constantly? Or actually pick good scripts rather than just commissioning people to make the same movie over and over again. People want to go out and see movies, and the huge success of Barbie and Oppenheimer proves that. And Across the Spider-Verse too. And you know what's different about these? They're quality flicks with good screenplays, good acting, made by visionary talents. And curiously enough, they were made with reasonable budgets. I'm not saying that throwing more money at writers and actors will instantly make every movie perfect. But this all just highlights that these CEOs don't really understand how to spend their money wisely or even understand the profession that they're in. Barbie makes piles of money, so they think that we all want to watch a whole cinematic universe of Mattel toys? Ugh, I wish I could get paid millions of dollars to make stupid decisions. If I had known that that could have been a career, I would have made all the money I'd ever need in life back in high school. Guys like Bob Iger are telling us the money is just too tight right now. I'm not gonna take Bob, I make $46 million a year Iger's word for it that the budget is too tight. If he took a 50% pay cut, they'd have a whole lot more money to bargain with and he'd still be set for life. Give me a break. Would he work for the money the average writer makes? I doubt it. The first part of the solution is to cut those company heads' paychecks. They can still be rich, that's fine, but it's gotten to the point where they're being paid so much that it is at the expense of the companies they work for. Either take the pay cut or get out. And maybe they'll say they pay their top actors millions of dollars too, and yeah, maybe some of those paychecks could be lessened to help keep those budgets in check. But at least the presence of those actors help market the movie. You don't see anyone lining up to catch Barbie because they know David Honey Boo Boo Zaslav is the studio head. Things are tighter right now for these studios, but the money is there. They just wanted to line their own pockets and congratulate each other for how rich they've made themselves. So, they need to meet the demands of these unions. If not, they'll soon be running out of content, and then the ship will start sinking. So, should you go see movies right now? Please do. Hollywood needs to see that the audience is there and wants to see films in theaters. But support the kinds of movies you want to see. If you want to see original stories, find those movies and watch them. But also, if you do like seeing movies like Indiana Jones or Transformers, of course do that too. But also, please support studios like A24. Invest in independent movies. Ask for more from your movies. Be willing to take risks at the theater. Support small films on Kickstarter. Subscribe to Moving Pictures on YouTube. These are all great ways to get your voice heard. I used to work as a projectionist. When the first digital projector came into my theater, I asked my GM, is this the beginning of the end for our jobs up here? And he said, no, we'll always need someone up here. But when I took a few months off for film school and afterward came back to ask for my old job back, he told me that there wasn't anything for me. The transition happened, and that was it. The projectionist job was no more. So trust me when I say that if it's one thing rich people hate doing, it's paying their workforce. Yes, I think special effects houses should unionize and should demand better pay and working conditions. Musicians should also unionize and demand better compensation from streaming platforms. Hell, theater employees should unionize and demand better pay and benefits from theaters. You know what? You get a union. And you get a union. We should all get unions. And if you want to help out the people on strike, you can donate to the Entertainment Community Fund to help them with the financial burden of the workers. The link is in the description. It'll take a group effort to keep these people afloat, and they speak for you. If you're a worker, this battle is for you too. Employers need to stop undervaluing their employees. Remember, the rich don't want to pay the working class because if you keep the workforce desperate, you can control them more. But we, the workers, actually have the power should we choose to wield it together. Also, #abolish capitalism. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.